Hello, everyone, and welcome to SiStar Light Up. I am here today with Chris Swenson. Chris is a psychotherapist who has spent the last several years training in mental toughness programs conducted by former special operations soldiers. So I'm very interested in hearing about that. He's taken what he has learned and sought to help and train many of those who struggle with mindset. He's also a mindset coach and author, and he operates the free Facebook group Rhino Mentality to optimize your performance. So hello, Chris. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello. Glad to be on. Let's have some
I am
fun. Yeah.
so excited. This is kind of a little bit different than what I usually do. I usually don't interview so many guys, and you're my second guy this month. So it's pretty interesting. I love it. Welcoming the divine feminine into this space, and we definitely need to do more of that. So I thank you for being here. I thank you for doing this. So tell me a little bit about you and your career. Like, how did you go from being, in the corporate world, really going from a psychotherapist and now going from a mindset coach? That's a pretty big evolution. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the evolution of a lot of our lives where we start off with, this is really what I want to do. And I see a lot of Facebook stuff sometimes. What would you originally wanted to do? And first off, like way back when I was much younger, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That's all I wanted to do was fly those cool jets, right? So I had the grades, I had the letter of recommendation to go to the Air Force Academy, all this stuff, except I have these things.
Oh, yeah.
So apparently you can't fly the cool jets with them. So then I'm like, So I went into like aviation business for a little bit in college, and it just didn't, and life happened. But eventually I got like an accounting degree. I actually have an accounting degree, and like one math class short of a business administration one. I didn't feel like I wanted just to take an extra algebra class to get another sheet of paper. But yeah, so I worked probably a number of years as an accountant doing like different aspects for business people. And I realized sitting behind a cubicle was not my thing. Like, this is just not it. Crunching numbers and sitting behind a cubicle is not good. Although it did benefit me now when I've been operating my practice for a while.
I'm sure.
That's been helpful. So eventually it kind of came around where, I don't know if I've just had a coming to Jesus moment in my life or what, but I had a time where all of a sudden, like, I think this is what I need to do. So I went in to finish up, just get a psychology bachelor's, and then went into a master's program for couple and family therapy. So I did that, and this was back, oh gosh, turn of the century. It sounds old when you say that, but yes. And so then, I've been doing like therapy work since probably 2002, 2003. Been a while, did a stint at different agencies, stuff like that. So I've got that feel of some great things at other times, like this is tearing me apart. Yeah. And then eventually I went into my own private practice, 2012. And that where I just started, and actually I had enough money for maybe about a month, and I was the only income earner in the family at the time, and I just went for it. And so it was a rough ride at first, but it made it happen. I guess when you burn those bridges, you go for it. So then I had that since 2012, and I still operate that now as well. And then shortly after that, because I did struggle a little bit in business, there's the business stuff like you can learn. Like I have like these other business experiences, and yes, I know how to like build a practice, open a practice, do all these things. But it was mainly this whole mindset piece, because I was brought up pretty much just in a lot of defeat, disappointment. All those things are like old friends to me that have been around. So I grew up with this defeatist mindset for years. And finally, I began making this change into what I refer to as Rhino. And Rhino is just, it's my own personal like ethic of how I see my life. It essentially stands for strong, wise, resilient. But it makes up like my 10 principles that I live life by, that I seek to earn every single day. And so my practice was Rhino Wellness. So Rhino is always around there. Many people are always asking me like, what's this Rhino thing? So then it opens up a great conversation sometimes for people. But essentially for my practice, that's what I want, is when people do come in and when they leave, that they're stronger, wiser, and more resilient than they were when they got here. But the last several years, I've gone through different programs with some special operations individuals that are now like coaches or motivational speakers, whatever they want to use as their title. And that's changed a lot of things for me as far as going from that defeatist stuff to really ingraining into what I see as being Rhino. And that really opened up my business. That really opened up everything to me, where it's like a whole new world, where it was like, wow, I was living like what for so long. And then it was like pulling off a different kind of glasses that you see the world by. And so I knew the difference that this made in my life. And that's where now with the Facebook group, Rhino Mentality, that this has become where I want to offer that for others, even business people, whoever. That are out there, because it's a way for me of kind of giving back. And I know what the struggle's like when you have to go up against things and feel kind of alone. So
that's right.
Yeah, I guess that's my short-winded version of my
No, that's perfect. And I have a few questions. No, I have a few questions backing up to like, okay, now, so you made it sound so simple, right? It's like, oh, I was an accountant and then I decided to go back to school. Like, that's not simple for a lot of people, right? Most people, you know, especially us in the older generation, where we were taught to like, you pick your career and you stay there and that's all you do, right? So to like go from a pretty steady career, even though it wasn't fulfilling your soul, sounds like, right? It wasn't really fulfilling you, to say, you know what, I'm just going to go back to school and get a degree in psychology. Like, how did that happen?
You know, it seems so long ago, but like, I mean, I just remember like, this was not where I wanted to be. This is not quite the thing. I knew previous to a lot of that, man, I used to probably drink a lot more than most people probably should. And many people are like, well, that's college. I'm like, no, you don't understand. And so, I mean, I cleaned myself up, and I think that might have been something way back then. But it was also the time where, I mean, I got married. I had started having kids. I mean, it was kind of this revelation about, you better figure yourself out, man. You know, you got to do something. And I've always had people come up to me with their issues or struggles. People talk to me, those kind of things. And so even from the get-go, I was like, I want to do this and have my own practice. Yeah. And so I think that might have been some of the things that spurred it. But I mean, I would imagine there was times where you just have those nights where you sit out and just kind of wonder, you know, maybe the universe kind of lets you know. Oh, yeah. In a very hard way of like, hello, we've been trying to tell you this for years, you know, that kind of thing. Exactly. And maybe I finally got it, because everything clicked and really went well once I made that. Yeah, because you're right. You finally listened, because like you said, and that's kind of what I was looking for, because a lot of the really good therapists that I know, you know, have been therapists their whole entire life. People ask me, well, when did you decide to become a therapist? I said, I think the therapist field chose me, because it was exactly like that, right? People would always come to you and talk to you about, like, you could be sitting, I don't know, I use an example, like sitting in Macy's trying on some shoes, and the person next to you tells you their whole life story. You know, you just look at them one time and it's like, my daughter, and they go into this, right? So I'm sure there was a lot of that in your life as well that made that click, because, you know, accounting and psychology, that's so different. You know, I mean, yes, you're helping people in both of those places, but one is about numbers and kind of, you know, you're not like doing, you know, you're not really getting to really know your clients when you're doing accounting like that, especially if you're doing for a company and you're doing audits and stuff like that. It's very different than it would be. Actually, you know, I really think about it, because my original thing, like, I wanted to fly jets since I was maybe 9-10 years old. And that was my whole life. And when that didn't quite happen, it was almost like, what do I do? I guess my dad's an accountant, his brother's an accountant, everybody does this. And then I started seeing friends kind of getting it. So I was like, well, I guess I'll do this. Right. So I don't really know if it was ever this wouldn't be like the best career coach kind of stuff. Like, I just pick something and go for it, you know? Yeah. I mean, I did enjoy it. I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of great people. I used to actually do like the accounting work for a music store, and that was a lot of fun. So I always tell people, like, they're like, hey, do you play any instruments? I'm like, I play a lot of them. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, like piano. It's easy. You just push the keys down. That's it. I don't play it very well, though. Yeah. That's awesome. I did have a friend of mine, when I did go back to school and going into psychology, like one of my good buddies, best friend of mine, he told me, he said, no, you have the demeanor for this. I'm surprised you didn't do this earlier. He's like, totally. No, this is definitely you. So that really helped kind of confirm some stuff. Yeah, that's great. That is the signs do come. And when you listen, the confirmation is always there. So that's great. So you work in the agencies like most of us do, right? To get our licensing hours and that kind of stuff. Right. And that's pretty exhausting and life sucking.
Um, so then but you went into this like saying, I'm going to have my own private practice. Like that was your goal, right? But you had to pay your dues like we all kind of do. And then you went into private practice. So tell me about your private practice and then how you got into this mindset. I know you were kind of, this was kind of clicking with you, like this is something bigger. Mindset has to be a focus because a lot of people need this, right? So tell me how that evolved for you.
Well, I think is a lot of the agency stuff, like when you did talk about the wear and tear on you, because people have always told me you can deal with anything. You're very mentally strong. You've been through a whole lot in your life. And there was a time at the agency where, I mean, you're sitting around like 35 hours or so of therapy sessions, and they would give me like the most, suicidal patients, this stuff. I mean, it was wearing me down, and I'd supervise others on top of this stuff. It was so much where I started having like health problem stuff where I thought I was having a heart attack. So I went in, and then they did all the EKG stuff like that. And then they told me, like, when they read the report or some blood test thing, well, it's not really that abnormal. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean not that abnormal? So it's abnormal, but not that what is going on here? Well, they said it wasn't enough for like a full heart attack thing, maybe no. So I just chalked it up to stress. But so I got put on like blood medication or blood thinners, heart pills, depression pills, anxiety pills, all these things. And I was going into work, it was miserable. And I can tell you, I went into my own practice because eventually that was where I wanted to be, my goal to do. And so once I got that set up, and after my first month, I took myself off of all those pills and stuff. Like there was still some stress, but it was a different kind of stress.
Right.
Yeah. So I took myself off of everything. And then I go into my doctor and she says, wow, everything looks pretty good. Everything is right on where they need to be. They must be working for you. I'm like, no, I took myself off. So I know what that's like when people really experience some intense like fatigue, burnout, whatever that might be from what you're doing. And so, yes, when I got into my private practice, that was where I was at. And I know a lot of people in my community were like, I had a lady approach me and said, Chris, we really need a good provider in our area. Because I live in a rural area, so it's fairly small.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'll find that person. And she's like, no, that's you. Like, okay. So I had some decent support from a lot of like referral sources that really helped.
Yeah.
And then I just went for it and got it. And then honestly, I was like, I should have did this a lot sooner was what I was kind of hoping for. But it's been great as far as that goes and doing the business here. I just know that underneath it all, it came to a time where I can help so many people myself.
Yes.
But how do I help others help more people? And I think that's where a lot of the mindset stuff is becoming here for the mindset coaching piece. And there's some business coaching stuff I do with marketing and strategies, things like that with different people. But I mean, I want to be able to help some people so they can help more because there's only so much that I can do myself. And knowing that because there's a lot of us as therapists that we know about like mindset things, but there's a whole nother level to it when you really start kind of like working to kind of retrain your brain with it as opposed to just some simple like CBT type of things that do go on. But no, I had the fortunate experience of going through a lot of those great programs. And I just got done doing one back in October with David Rutherford. I don't know if you know who he is or not, but he's a former SEAL that does motivational speaking. He was part of the Team Never Quit podcast originally with Marcus. And then now he does Frog Logic, but he had this Embrace Fear program, which was really cool. So I know one of the weeks to kind of retrain our brain towards fear. I mean, he had us doing like cold showers for a week, ice baths, stuff like this. But a lot of it wasn't just to put yourself in uncomfortable. It was being able to really like deal with all that and keep your focus and stay where you need to be. So it was very beneficial. So I've enjoyed a lot of those kind of things. And so now like this, to get into kind of mindset stuff, it's just like, I remember when I first said, okay, maybe I should write a book because maybe that'll make myself look better to everybody, And so I was trying to think about looking at why do businesses always fail? We have the same percentage across probably the last 2 decades or so, the same failure rate. Yet we have so much access to technology and trainings and teachings. And I'm like, why aren't we improving this? And I saw a lot of it within, especially in our private practice community, other places too, where so heavily focused on strategy and building up like the structure of a business. And to me, like, you can go on Google, you can find it all over the weekend for the most part with some of those things. But yeah, you're going to need help from people. But mindset was missing. Like, it just wasn't there. It was, people would go through and get a practice set up, and then they realized that this practice wasn't built for who they were, or it wasn't doing kind of the work that their soul wants to do, And so being able to have it from the beginning and build it to how it fits for you is something that is really a great thing, I guess. So kind of rambled on there. Sorry about you.
No, that was perfect. That was great. And that's exactly it, because you're right. You can do all the things, right, to build it, but if you don't have the right mindset behind it, it's not going to be successful. Right now I'm trying to plan a visibility summit, which I hate all the marketing stuff. I'm not even going to like lie about it. I hate it, but I know it's necessary. Right. But what I've been doing is I know I have to do this. And I've been having this weird mindset about it, how annoying it is and things are falling off because of it, so it's like, once I know I reset it, during the day, even during the day, it and once I reset it, things start to fall in place again, so it's very interesting. And if people really watch the subtleties of what their mindset and what their thoughts do, they would really get how powerful we are as human beings and how our mind really can create our reality. Our thoughts and our mindset can create our reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I look at a lot of just the energy of it,
Mm-hmm.
Where I do this all the time. I'm like, hey, Chris, is this working out for you right now? Like, putting these thoughts, this is the way you're looking at it, this energy you got vibing off you. Mm-hmm. Is that really helpful? Then I'm like, no, but it feels good for the moment,
Right.
But there's a time where, when you're able to switch it into a different perspective, a different deal, and come from a different energy level. And to me, that's the joy of the ride of like what you're doing when you want to put on a summit. Is something that I did like last summer. And there's a lot of work to that. Mm-hmm. But to me, like now, it's like when it comes to it, everything becomes like a mental toughness exercise. Like, okay, this is going to be frustrating. This is going to be annoying. This is going to be, a challenge to me. Absolutely. There you go, And to me, that's the thing that'll make us be where we're at. And so sometimes I hear people like, how do I overcome and get rid of this? I don't want to have fear. I don't want to have anxiety. I don't want to have stress. Just tell me the easy way. There isn't. It's right. Learning to embrace those things and accept it as part of the reality, but using them to really, become, a much better person. And that's the spiritual essence for me for private practices or any business is when you build that business, it's the struggle you go through of building the business. That's what makes you become bigger and better for who you are. And that has more to offer to people. And so there's such a meaning to me about a lot of that. So when you go through those endeavors, yes, you're going to be hounded by a lot of that, like I call like darkness that gets into our head and kind of, tries to get us off our path. And sometimes it definitely wins. And other times we're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Well,
you're right. I mean, it usually wins when we try to push it away, right? When we try to say, like you said, people try to get rid of those parts of them, and it's like, no, but that's you. That's part of you, and you have to learn to embrace it because it's serving a function. We all have those parts of us. We have the positive and we have the negative, or the light and the dark, and if we fully embrace all of that, then we become magic. We become magical people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a great book. You may have read it or not, but I mean, by Stephen Pressfield. Is it The War of Art? I keep thinking of The Art of War, but that was probably Sun Tzu. But I think it's The War of Art, and it's written by Stephen Pressfield. Great book, and he refers to a lot of this stuff that interferes with our creativity. And he refers to it as the what do you call it? The resistance. There's like the resistance that's out there, and it's not just to get rid of, but the full embracing. I know Rutt and his stuff he calls it like the negative insurgency. That kind of does for me. I just refer to it as darkness. It can be kind of whatever that is, but it's something that when you can learn that these are the things that are going to make you be who you are, like not being afraid of pain, not being afraid of failure. It's not that I enjoy those things,
right?
But when you really understand that this becomes that moment in the time that can really, to make you a better person. And I think that's a lot of what, I'm very big on for myself, trying to be as best as I can be.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And it's true because we're all going to experience that. It'd be nice if everything was great and everything was, rainbows and ponies, like I say. And I tell people, you know, part of what I do is, as a psychotherapist, help people with anxiety and depression, but also help them kind of find that spiritual path if that's what they're looking for. And I always say it's not, in the beginning, it may seem really cool and great, right? But it's not all rainbows and ponies. It's very difficult. And it's the same thing with changing the mindset. It takes work, it takes energy, it's exhausting sometimes, but it's so worth it when you get it right. When it clicks and you get it and you do it, it becomes the way, like you said, why didn't I do this all along? Like, right? Because you change your mindset when you decided, even in the hardest times, I remember you saying that when you did decide to do your private practice, it was a pretty difficult time, like financially and with family and those kinds of things, but you still took that leap anyway, because you said, this is the goal. And if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. Or something said that to you, and that's pretty courageous, and talk about a serious mindset shift to say, I can do this, and I know I can do this, and I'm gonna, even in these uncomfortable times right now.
Yeah, and that's been the thing, because for me, it's so weird now for me, because weird in a way compared to how I used to be when I was younger. Where it like for me, when it's like a lot of the hard work it's going to take to do this. Maybe I don't even know how to do this. How am I going to figure this out? I don't know. And in my mind, it's like, I'll figure it out. Like I experience physically, like the fear of failure, the fear of disappointment when things don't go well. I'll experience that, which is experiencing life. But it's like I'm not afraid of that. And I think there's a difference between fear and being afraid. Like, fear is something we feel, but being afraid is when we hold ourselves back and allow it to kind of control our life. Where for me, it's like it's almost like where I've experienced this so much that it's like, okay, I guess I can take a punch, but it hasn't killed me yet. So I guess we'll keep going until it does. I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're right. I love that, how you say that, fear is the emotion that we feel, but being in fear is what holds us back. And that is so true, because you can experience fear and use it as motivation, right? Because, fear comes nervousness and excitement and all those things underneath it. But when you're in fear, then you stop yourself and you pause, because all the what ifs come into play, the what ifs that aren't even real, and the doubts and then all the other stuff around there. So I like the way you say that, because it's so true, because we can fear, all those dark emotions or negative emotions that we want to get rid of can be quite helpful if we learn to embrace them in ways like that.
Yep, absolutely. It is. And then just that retraining of our response to that, like when we talk about embracing it and then responding to it. There's a natural way, like when there's a burning building, most of us were pretty hardwired to, I need to get out of here. Let me run, like that kind of thing. But there's firefighters that know they are to go right into a burning building. How do you do that?
Right.
And like, I was doing a presentation for a bunch of the childcare workers and stuff on a lot of just mental health and COVID. And I remember using this example of, I did a workshop for them essentially, and helping them to kind of like retrain that brain. And I described this about how a firefighters do these. Well, one of the ladies who's also a childcare provider is a firefighter, and she had commented on there like, that's exactly it. And she was nailing it. Like, this is what we do, from how we step, how we put our mind to go. And it's so like trained in that it becomes automatic for them. Right. They don't have to think about it. Yeah. So.
Right. And that's exactly it, right? Retraining the brain, because it's possible, and you can change the processing and the thought process. So tell me so you said you decided to write a book to see if it would make you, look better, but I'm sure there were because writing a book is not an easy thing. So like, what other motivation was that? And tell me a little bit about the book.
Well, there's a couple books that I wrote, and one of the first ones I did is probably the most helpful from what I've heard from people. Not saying the second one isn't helpful. It's not as, I guess I haven't promoted it as much.
Okay.
But
what's the name of the first one?
Yeah, my first one I wrote is called Rhino Life Lessons, and you can find it on Amazon. And I got a bunch of copies at home where I sign them for people all the time. But that one, what I initially did is, people have taken these now and they're like, oh my gosh, can I get some more? I need to send it to my friends for their birthday. Hey, I'm going to give it to my kids. I was hanging out with friends in Florida, and they actually ordered my book while I was there, didn't know it. And so she's like, hey, look, I got this in the mail. I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, her teenage daughter runs up and grabs it, says, I'm reading this first, you know? And so what I had is there's basically like 32 lessons in the book that can really be beneficial. But when I first wrote that, I wanted to know, like, okay, how do I do this process? How does this happen? And so, I mean, I had written blog post after blog post, newspaper article, and I went down and narrowed it down to basically the top 32, and then reworked them a little bit and went through the whole process of publishing that, because I figured at some point I'd really like to write a great book, you know? And so then I found out that it was a lot more simpler than what I thought it was, which is kind of typical sometimes with fears and stuff. But, you know, you work through it, you find out. Google becomes a great resource for you, you know, and so I got that one put out and published. There's been a lot of people that really enjoy that. I mean, I do like there's a lady that does some reflexology for me every 2 weeks. And oh my gosh, I love that. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, anyways, she just recently says, I need to get one from you because my friend's birthday is coming up. So I got one for her. So that one's been really like helpful because it's geared more towards anybody, you know, on a self-help kind of thing. The second one I wrote, this is the one where I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to do something to get some authority, you know, and that one I called Private Practice Warrior. That one's also on Amazon as well, but it's Private Practice Warrior. And it really looks at what is the most successful factor to be able to make it long term, which is essentially our mindset. And so I wrote it instead of like a businessy book, like, you know, it's like, here's stories of these people, blah, 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 blah. I wrote it like a story. And so you basically follow the main character through a lot of his challenges and what goes on. And then he ends up meeting these historical people. In fact, the main one he meets is Miyamoto Musashi, who is the great swordsman of the samurai culture. And so I'm big in like samurai kind of culture stuff. I enjoy a lot of their stuff. Well, anyways, through their conversations, he learns about a lot of the stuff that's there. And so I don't want to ruin everything, but it kind of takes you through the story of what he learns. And then by the end, he applies a lot of this, but there's some twists and turns in it to make it a story also besides the influence. And it's a great book where there's a lot of like lessons contained in it that you continue to learn from that, which is really, really cool. But yeah, so that one, and essentially that would made a switch to Rhino Mentality, because I've always had the Rhino Mentality has just been my mindset for since probably 2008, 7. I really tried putting it together, and now it's this is who I am. That's what people say. That's the thing. You're a Rhino. And so the philosophy of the Private Practice Warrior is actually Rhino Mentality, said as this. And so as I was trying to put out different programs on Private Practice Warrior, I did a lot of podcasts with a lot of people, met a lot of great people as well. They're very supportive. It just didn't feel right, because it felt like I was putting on like the Spider-Man costume when it's not. There's this thing that I'm either trying to be, even though it is me, but it's like disguised. And so I decided I'm going to go completely with me and Rhino Mentality. And that's just happened within this back fall, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to just put myself out there, and this is what it is. So that book it's geared towards people in business. It doesn't have to be. People can definitely read into that. But so I want to maybe rework that one. I always get ideas for books all the time. And I know I'm an avid reader. I love reading. And even going back to when I first started getting into this, to do either like private practice, what I want to do, psychology, I've always wanted to do like trainings and write books and stuff like that. So I'm still getting back to kind of probably who I really was meant to be. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Discovering and uncovering the person that you were meant to be. So that's awesome. I mean, I think that's really creative to write it in a story, like, you know, and the fact that you like to read and write and all those things, and then having all that information already there, right? So making it, like you said, as we sometimes make it so much harder than it really is. And when you have the resources there, you just got to look and put it all together. So you said you've been, the Rhino thing has been for you for a long time, but what made you pick was it something that you just said, the rhino, that just seems kind of good for me? I resonate with that. Or had you always liked the rhino? Like, how did you pick?
Yeah, it's kind of, because I know I have like I got one of my tattoos here,
Mhm.
and it's of an eagle, and I got that for my 21st birthday. So rhino was never even in my mind then, but it was probably from 21 to 26. I always call it like the dark ages for me. It was a rough time.
Yeah.
But as coming out of there, it was odd because I never picked like one of the most influential people would be Abraham Lincoln for me. And so I did not, it just popped to me with him and I began learning about that. I think the rhino was kind of the same way, where it just kind of came out as some people looked at it as this strong, powerful thing. And I went, oh, maybe that would be kind of a cool deal, that would kind of stand for what I'm talking about. And then people would always tell me like, well, they're aggressive and you're not. I'm like, yeah, well then now I found out they have poor eyesight.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So to me, when they see something move, I get aggressive too. So it's not like they are, it's a bad rap.
Right.
And then I realized that people talk about their thick armor, and it's actually pretty sensitive. It can sunburn, it can, all these things. And I thought, well, this is a great way of looking at this, where you get kind of this misunderstood animal, if you will, or even like for me, a lot of times people get misunderstood, or it's just, however, it was a great thing. And rhinos and also became people that have gone through a lot of hard times. To me, I look at them as the true rhinos of life that have gone through a lot of challenges, and they just, for whatever reason, they keep going,
right,
find a way through it, man. And that is the true rhinos of life as I look into that. But no, rhino became, and even when I was in graduate school, they had us do ethic, like how our therapy was based on. And you write a word on a rock, like help and love and joy or whatever it is. And for me, being me, as I call it, as rhino, you just rhino your way around. There are rules, but there are sometimes we don't quite, in a good way. I couldn't find one word. I came up with two and then added a third, but I didn't write it on a rock. I got this like baby rhino and I wrote them on there, and I still have it to this day. And to me, I got a baby rhino because at the time I'm like, I'm just a baby rhino. I'm not I'm still learning, and so now it just becomes, it summarizes up basically what my mindset is. It has my 10 principles that I usually go through each day. And when I read them off to myself, I always end that with, I'm going to live with this today, or how do I earn this today? Instead of just talk about it, it's how do I earn this so that I can experience these things each and every day. And so that's become a big kind of thing. If that kind of looks at it from
it does. It makes perfect sense, because at first when I first started learning about you, I was like, rhino, same thoughts, right? They're aggressive, they're tough, they're whatever. But then I started reading up on it, and then I looked up the definition of a rhino spirit animal or spirit guide, right? And it is all of that, right? Perseverance. It is, getting through difficult times. It is, it has nothing to do with aggression. It has everything to do with, pushing through difficult situations. And when you're in a difficult space, using a rhino as a spirit guide or spirit animal can really help you power through, the tough times. So,
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of cool hearing about that, because people always ask, what is your spirit animal? I'm like, hello, rhino. I mean, whether it just kind of came into me or I decided, well, now it's totally real to me. But I know, like when I was younger, people called me Little Chris, right? Because there was like two other Chris's in the neighborhood. He was older than me, so he's Big Chris. I was Little Chris, even though I was bigger than him. But whatever. I was always Little Chris. So I always tell myself, like, Little Chris is that scared little kid. It's always there. Little Chris is always there. But there's this other part that has become more dominant, if you will. Which is that which I call like rhino. And hearing like that about the perseverance and all of that, absolutely, that's just what I do. And I look at life that way. It's not that I don't want like peaceful all the time. It's not that. It would be great, but there's times where the struggles that we have are what make us who we are. And I kind of feel like in this world, that's part of what it is. Our time here is kind of like the blacksmith of life, and we're getting hammered away on, and eventually we come out in kind of a better way. I know I had a client the other day that was like, oh my gosh, I just want to be peaceful all the time. And I went, man, that's like a dead man's goal. You know, I mean, if you're going to be alive, there's going to be stuff, but and it's not like I do it in like a almost like a Dr. Phil in your face way.
Yeah,
That's not me at all.
yeah,
So I empathize with people, but it's kind of like, you know, let's be realistic about this. I get it. I'd like a reprieve too for a while, but you know,
yeah.
well, yeah, I think you get
Well,
it.
but it's also a mindset because you can be peaceful through tough times. You know, you can be peaceful. You choose to be peaceful, even when stuff is spinning out of control. Like I've definitely gotten much better at that because I used to be a very feisty person. Um,
Love it. Yes.
and I've gotten much better with dealing with with being in stressful situations and being calm, you know,
Mm.
and more at peace. I'm not saying that I'm not stressed, but it's a different type of stress and it is more peaceful. So, you know, I think sometimes we think of peace as like nothing ever bad is going to happen, but that's not realistic, you know.
Yeah,
Even
so
if
I
we're
actually
in the
I've seen
world peace, there'll be things that will happen, you know.
I was amazed when I read this I don't know if it's from a book or a study, but they looked at stress and like what kills. And so however they did this study, I don't know. But anyways, they people had the same level of stress. Some died, some didn't. And
Mhm.
so they looked at the differences. And what it really came down to is their view of what they thought stress was doing to them. So the simple thought of what like, it does, if this is killing me, then it was.
Yeah.
The people that said, no, the stress I feel is gearing me up to deal with the demands of this situation, they looked at their blood vessels and the ones that had like this is killing me, it just went,
Yeah.
you know, whereas the ones like, no, it's gearing me up. My body's doing what I'm supposed to do, which is incredible. Our body does some amazing things to just adapt. Then they stayed open, you know. So sometimes it's what I'm very fascinated by is part of that mindset piece where, yeah, you know, you can
Yeah.
see someone who can sit out in freezing cold weather and maintain their temperature. Like, how does that work? Like, I'm not going to try that. You know, I've
No, me
enough
either.
cold water training. I don't want to. Yeah, but it's just amazing to me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it is. It's that mind body, you know, spirit connection where it's like all of it is encompassed. All of it is together. You know, one of my teachers that I follow, she, you know, one of the best quotes that I like about her is the body never lies. You know, the body reacts to your mentality. You know, and it tells you like look at that study. I mean, just the difference of mindset that it made in the physical presentation of those people. Amazing, amazing. Yeah, so I think you. Well, so one more question: how do you work with people right now? So I know you have your private practice, but how else are you working with people? Because I know you talked about wanting to work with the masses, right? So you're coaching. How do you do that?
What I do is I do have my free Facebook group. That's the easiest way of people probably knowing about me, what I do, that Rhino Mentality group. Um, and I can send you a link to that so people can get that or whatever.
Yeah.
So I just put out a Break Free from Imposter Syndrome program. And this is a one, like a 4-week program where basically we go through and nail this thing down and retrain your brain and get you out so that after 4 weeks, you can stand toe to toe with this thing and do well. I just closed. I noticed like when I scheduled this, I'm like, whoa! I had just closed the cart like Thursday, you know, for at least the ones that start in March. But that's something that'll come. So I have like various programs that'll be coming out. And I know if they're in the group, people will hear about those kind of things. There's also times where people want to work, you know, either on a one-on-one or whatever. They can just message me, and we'll get a lot of that arranged as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So once this goes up on my page, just pop if you can pop the link in the comments to how to to your website and to the group, and I think people can find it there. That'd be great. Is your group just for therapists or is it for everyone?
Right now with the Rhino Mentality one, it's pretty open. There's a lot of therapists that are in there, and there's a lot of other people too. Some of the people like because they do other business stuff.
Yeah.
So they're not quite just therapists. Yeah, they're just like I said. It's really focused on mindset and really wanting to hit that. So the people that do, and I've had like some people in my town that have also kind of jumped in. Some friends of mine, and I'll run into people when I'm out, and they're like, "Oh my gosh." Like, yeah, I just keep doing some of that stuff. Like what you just said really hit for me in this moment, you know, stuff like that. So it's pretty rewarding for me to do on that level. So I just try to serve as best I can. So
Yes, yes, that's it. That's right. That's it. So yeah, good, awesome. So pop those links in there, and then people can find you because I think what you're doing is amazing, and people need this stuff. So I appreciate you for taking the time to talk about this today. So I have 3 last questions that I ask everybody when I do this. The first question is, what lights you up?
What lights me up? It's probably, I'm a big person on family.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, part of like my Rhino part is my 10th principle. And 10th doesn't mean that it's the last one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just on the list as number 10 for whatever.
Yeah.
Is love and enjoyment.
Yeah.
And I know my grandfather, he would always tell me, Chris, life is meant to be enjoyed. And I'd be like, are you kidding me? Look at all this. What the heck? And after he passed away, I'm not kidding you. It was like on my drive home from the funeral, he just like, either he just slammed into me or what. But I'm like, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
And so I want to like cherish as much as I can. So I think what really lights me up, besides like the topic of mindset, would be like family and friends. Because people even say, do you have a bucket list? And I'm like, no. I don't care if I don't like, do bungee jumping or go a place. I want to be able to spend as much time with family and friends as I possibly can. And that's why I think what really lights me up a lot. I try to just soak in every moment, listening to my daughter sing or dance, watching my son's basketball games. And I just, because I know it's not going to last forever. So
Right. That's beautiful. I know. It's like, I think also the way of the world has been for the last 2 years has really put that into perspective for a lot of people, really appreciating the time that you have with family, because you never know what's going to happen. So, I think that's beautiful. My second question is, what advice do you have for your younger self, knowing what you know now?
I think the thing to my younger self, I don't know, it'd be kind of a tough one when I think about it. Cause I always usually tell people like, advice is always just to never ever forget about the inner game, because it's always going on. But I think my advice for my younger self, when I look back, is to say like, no worries, man. Yeah. You're going to be all right. It's the things like that where, sometimes I wish I could be like, you know what, you need to drop that story and start doing something different. Like, oh, come on, I could have lived myself so much better instead of being held back and imprisoned by fear and all these things and doubt that I really struggled with. But that made me where I am today. So I guess that might be the thing, is to say, listen, it might be tough for you. It might be a hard time, but your future self would love to just give you as much honor as you possibly can, because you're struggling. That makes that person be a much better person for you. So, yeah.
Right. That's perfect. Because you're right. The path is not straight and narrow, and you wouldn't be able, I think, to help as many people as you do, as effectively as you do, if you hadn't gone through your own trials and tribulations. So, it just makes us appreciate things more and really, really want to be of service, I think, So, all right. And then the last question is, what advice do you have for the younger generation? Sounds like you have young kids, so I'm sure this is something that you tell
I do. It is. My oldest is, in her early 20s and married, and I have a soon to be 3-year-old granddaughter. She'll be 3 in March. So yes, and she's amazing. I love that. And then my son is 17, and my youngest daughter is 14. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of them with the younger piece. And my biggest thing, and that's what it is not to be afraid of uncomfortableness. Not just to try to seek out. It's good to be comfortable, but there's a time where being uncomfortable for the sake of putting yourself out there and doing something you really believe in, that's good. And even when things don't start working out okay right away, that don't matter. That's part of the journey. Stay with it. It's different when it's uncomfortableness that comes out of something that you're not creating. I think that can be a challenge. It can still be embraced and used, but it's a different kind of uncomfortableness that's there. But a lot of times that's probably what I would look at to the younger people. Besides that, I tell them, enjoy life, man, because I wouldn't mind going back and hanging out with friends. I do not want to go back and do English class again. It's not my thing. But I love to go back and hang out with my friends, things like that. So there's a time where it's, not to take yourself so seriously and just enjoy yourself, but not to be afraid of some of the hard times that are going to be with you.
That's ironic, says the writer who doesn't like English class. Like,
yes, I know. And I even don't like like writing or typing. So a lot of times I speak it,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, that comes in because I really don't like that, but yet I do.
See where there's a mentality mind shift set. I mean, there it is. Because if you didn't even like English, but you wrote 2 books. Like, come on now.
I know. I think most of like English class was like, and I don't even know what this really is, but I always use this as an example. Like when we had to go through like the dangling participles and some of that stuff, and I was just, or they gave you the most boring thing to read ever, and then you're
Yeah,
supposed to remember what you read. I'm like,
right. You're supposed to process and answer questions.
yeah.
Like,
Besides art class, that
yeah.
would know because I'm not, and I envy people that can do art, and it's phenomenal. It's something that I just can't do. Very creative in my mind, but not drawing. I mean, I still draw. I'll draw like stick people sometimes when kids come in, and they could draw way better than me, and I'm like, awesome.
Yeah, that's right. You handle that. I'll handle my stick figures over here. Well, Chris, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, super enjoyable. I'm so happy to have connected with you, and I'm so happy to hear about the work that you're doing. So everybody check him out, look at his links. He's obviously, you can tell he's an amazing person, really trying to help others change their lives. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. And you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, even for those kind words you put. It's been an honor to be on here, and I'm hoping that what we talked about can definitely resonate with some people. So,
Yes.
yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm sure it will definitely resonate. All right. You have a great night.
All right, we'll see you.